Here we are, friends, at the end of all things. End of the decade, end of the year in review series, end of the universe. It's finally time to talk about Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds' name probably precedes itself, when it's not getting mixed up with some other space game. This game utterly decimated my YouTube feed back when it released, and I'm pretty sure they put something in the user agreement saying that the game must contractually end up somewhere in the top 10 list of anyone who's played it. But Outer Wilds is also a game as mysterious as it is championed, for those who laud its ingenuity often do so in hushed tones as they tiptoe around spoilers. It's an exploration game, and digging for answers to the game's central mysteries is its main source of entertainment. And so the wisdom goes that the less you know going in, the more likely Outer Wilds will wow you. But if you've somehow made it this far and still don't know if Outer Wilds is for you, that's where First 5 comes in, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today we're preventing the heat death of the universe in Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is, above all else, a mystery game. There are two big things this game has going for it. A tiny, handcrafted sandbox filled with intricately laid out planets full of stuff to discover, and the mystery of what happened to the extinct culture that left all that stuff behind. Let's start by talking a bit about that sandbox. Outer Wilds is a game where you can jump into your ship's cockpit, take off, and just go wherever you want. See that planet over there? You can get right all up in that ravine if you want to. What about this ball of gas? Dive right in and check it out. There's an ocean under all those clouds. Pretty much anything you see, you can land on and explore. But, your ship might not be where you expect it to be when you come back. And that probably sounds like a familiar promise, right? But Outer Wilds is going a mile deep, not a mile wide with its design. Instead of quintillions of procedurally generated galaxies to explore, you get one, filled with planets that the developers have painstakingly developed almost every square foot of. You can't walk for 30 seconds without tripping over a massive energy tower, spacecraft, or fellow explorer. Outer Wilds Sandbox is a smaller, more intimate place, and I wholeheartedly prefer it to a vast open world because every nook and cranny contains something unique that's meant to be explored. And more importantly, every last one of those unique things are all interconnected in one vast web. That's where Outer Wilds' other big hook comes in. All those towers, spaceships, and ancient ruins you run into belong to a long-extinct culture called the Nomai. The star system is littered with their grand projects, ranging from forges that use black holes to energy stations wielding the power of a star. A vast majority of the game is spent trying to figure out how all these facilities from straight out of the wildest annals of science fiction work, and more importantly, why the Nomai built them. Each major facility is its own mystery, with clues strewn across multiple planets. I spent a large part of my first 5 hours obsessively tracking down something called the High Energy Lab, where the Nomai were playing around with some time shenanigans and a few miniature black holes. The whole adventure started because on my very first trip into space, I accidentally went and fell through a black hole and found a random bit of lore on the other side talking about the place. And then I spent the next 2 hours trying to locate it, then actually find a way to break in, only to discover that it was just one piece of a much larger mystery, and the larger puzzle was itself only one part of the Nomai's grand master plan. But that's a plan you'll have to uncover one piece at a time, because every 22 minutes, the heat death of the universe happens. So on top of everything else, you're stuck in a time loop. Die at any point, and you get sent back to the start to hunt for clues anew, and the galaxy resets along with you. And this time loop in turn brings us full circle back to the Sandbox universe, because every planet is made even more interesting by a gimmick that's affected by the time loop. The place I spent the most time in was a pair of planets orbiting around each other. One was a rocky Mars-like planet with deep ravines and a vast cave system, while the other was a big, uninteresting ball of sand. But as each time loop progresses, the sand moves from one planet to the other, filling in the caves of the Mars-like planet while revealing a whole network of hidden ruins on the sand world. So during each time loop, you're on the clock to explore the caves before they get filled with sand, and looking for shortcuts you can use to get back to important spots faster the next time around. And meanwhile, you only have a few minutes each run to well and truly explore the sand planet. All of that makes up the core loop of Outer Wilds. Go explore, try to piece together a few more clues about what the Nomai were up to, the universe explodes, repeat. And as you might have guessed from all the end-of-year lists Outer Wilds has been topping, it's a really compelling loop at that. In all of it, I only have one real complaint, and it's a pretty small one to boot. So space travel is hard? Not exactly blowing any minds with that one, but Outer Wilds also tries to maintain the slightest degree of realism with it that can sometimes be equal parts hilarious and frustrating. Like the time I investigated a space wreck in orbit around a planet, then came out to discover that my ship had buggered off to the opposite side of that planet's orbit while I was busy exploring. And my first reaction was to chuckle and facepalm, because of course the wreckage doesn't have any gravity, so of course my ship drifted off on its own while I spent 10 minutes not paying attention to it. I only have myself to blame. But also, in situations like that, I'd really like to just teleport back into my ship and get on with exploring the universe instead of being forced to stare into the emptiness of space with nothing to do for 15 minutes. Logic be damned. My ensuing failed attempts to slingshot myself into my own spaceship would have been hysterical slapstick, if not for the fact that I had a million other things I'd rather been doing in that moment. You quickly learn that that spaceship is your umbilical cord, and if you find yourself separated from it, there's not a whole lot you can do other than just die. It's certainly true to space travel, but also not the most efficient way to spend your time. And yeah, that's a more personal nitpick, but it's also one about how you spend your time, which brings us to the ultimate question. What do you get out of 5 hours with Outer Wilds? If you spent all 5 of those hours doggedly pursuing one mystery and one mystery only, you might actually get to the bottom of one of the Nomai's enigmatic creations. But on my adventure, I went for a bit of a smorgasbord, which definitely feels like the better way to approach the game. Some planets I spent hours on, and others I haven't even started exploring yet. But I've started to get what feels like a pretty good view of what's going on with the Nomai. 5 hours has definitely gotten past the introduction and let me wade deeply into the meat of the game, but I haven't tied off any loose ends yet, and suspect I won't until I'm much closer to the finish. And all in all, this feels like a game more about the journey than the destination, so even if I were to stop playing now and never find that closure, I'd still be pretty satisfied with all the cool stuff I've gotten to tinker around with. Even among the rare games set in space, exceedingly few ever try to focus purely on the unfiltered excitement of actual space exploration. And Outer Wilds is the first I've played that's managed to take that spark and put it in a manageable package. This isn't just a great game in its own right, but a great counterpoint to the 80-hour open-world title or day-in-the-life space sim grind. A lot like Eastshade before it, Outer Wilds proves that open worlds don't have to be massive to be compelling. But hey, maybe you've never heard of Eastshade, in which case, check out my review of it, and maybe you'll find another game to throw on your wishlist. Or check out Heaven's Vault, another archaeology-centric sci-fi space adventure that's a bit more narrative-driven. But I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.